it's not about his feet, it's not about his heart, it's about his head with Rashford. It's getting into his head, encouraging him to deliver, because there's a fantastic player there.
Marcus Rashford is back amongst the goals. Alejandro Garnacho is supplying selection headaches, and Manchester United have won back-to-back games. All in all, it's been a good week. We're looking at all of that, previewing Crystal Palace and more on the latest episode of the Theatre of Red. In somewhat of an anomaly, I speak to you today off the back of a brace of Manchester United wins, where Erik Ten Hag's squad supplied 10 goals, kept 2 clean sheets and raised a sense of optimism in Old Trafford. Joining me today to discuss a positive week in the Northwest for a second appearance on the show, the first individual to do so on the Theatre of Red is Mr. Henry Winter. Henry, great to speak to you again. How is everything in your world?
Good, but it sounds even better in your world.
Absolutely. It's going good. I can't complain too much at this moment in time. Anyway, when you and I spoke previously, it was during Gareth Southgate's final days of preparation ahead of the Euros, and we assessed the season to come, everything from the future of Erik Ten Hag, alongside potential signings and expectations for the squad for the season ahead. Fast forward to this moment, and the Dutchman obviously remains in the seat. A multitude of first-team players have departed, a best-in-class backroom team has overseen a rather positive summer window, and Manchester United have got 6 points from a possible 12 in the Premier League. Now, it didn't take long for the naysayers to assemble. You're looking at a cruel defeat to Brighton. They moved front and centre then following a disastrous defeat to Liverpool. However, despite high-profile international errors, calls for the manager's head, highly publicised interviews between ex-players and disenchantment in the Stretford end, an Andre Onana penalty save in the 33rd minute against Southampton has the potential to act as a defining catalyst for a shift in fortunes. Before we dive into a badly needed 3-0 win at St Mary's, just how crucial was that penalty save by United's number one?
Absolutely huge. You could see the fact that when he was interviewed afterwards, all the questions were about, is this a turning point? And he sort of played that down. And look, the penalty from Cameron Arch, quite sure why he was taking it, but it was at a good height for Onana, who sort of dived to his right, got a hand on it, and then very calmly sort of plucked the follow-up, the headed follow-up out of the air. So look, he can do. I think that's his second penalty save for United. I mean, he's a good. Whether it's his presence on the line, bouncing around, and then that agility, just to sort of to know which way to go and to make the save. But you could just sense afterwards. I mean, I was only watching the game on the television, but you could sense afterwards that there was the fans. There was a sort of adrenaline ran through them at that delight of that, because they hadn't played well beforehand, and then the players responded to that. They know that this was a reprieve, and they had to make the most of it.
Absolutely. And it was his first penalty save, I believe, in the Premier League. I think he actually faced 6 or 7 in the Premier League. But of course, he did have that famous penalty save in the Champions League. Yeah. At the time, we were hoping that was going to be a catalyst for better things. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. But regarding the performance itself, following a largely uninspiring opening half hour, the real Manchester United very much stood up and delivered a capable performance, while only being in second or third gear, to see off Russell Martin's side with ease. I know Southampton have got problems of their own, but it was a badly needed 3 points following back-to-back defeats. You had that crucial goal from Marcus Rashford, nestled between a Matthias de Ligt opener and Alejandro Garnacho injury time third. How did you view the last 60 minutes of that trip south for Ten Hag's men?
Well, I'm a big admirer of Marcus Rashford. I see his weaknesses. I understand why fans get frustrated about him and his body language, and whether he's actually really enjoying his football. What Marcus Rashford needs, because he's a slightly introverted individual, he just needs to know that the love is out there for him, which I think the Manchester United fans who travel home and away, who pack out Old Trafford, they give him that love. They want him to do well. And he really absolutely needs that, and he'll probably go on a run if he's got that sort of belief. So absolutely, that goal was important for him. De Ligt's goal, I thought, he took that well. I thought he grew into the game as well. I mean, he's if he gets back to his sort of late teenage Ajax form and on from there, then Manchester United have got a terrific terrific player. I think he's a leader as well. He's vocal. You can tell that. So absolutely, and then Garnacho as well. We know how good he is, and what's been interesting. I thought Ahmad had a good game. In how Ten Hag is actually going to juggle those three, because Garnacho prefers the left, Rashford prefers the left, although he can play through the middle. I quite like him through the middle if he uses that pace and he's not really thinking about the game. He's just herring onto a through ball, and obviously Ahmad on the right. Personally, I don't see Anthony in the pitch. I don't see if he can bring anything more than certainly Ahmad on the right. So look, at some point, Ten Hag's got an interesting decision to make, how he juggles those three, because Garnacho, I can't imagine he'll be happy sitting on the bench for too long.
I would agree with all of that. And it really ties in with the comments that he said before Barnsley in the Cup, which we'll get to later. Obviously, he had a totally different dilemma and a different series of problems last season with the injuries. It's a good collection of problems that he has regarding the players and the way that they're all performing, because ultimately, if you have goals in the starting 11, if you have goals from the bench, it's every manager's dream. You mentioned De Ligt and returning to the form that he had as a late teenager, which seems bizarre. He had come in line for some intense scrutiny following a couple of outings for the Netherlands during that latest international
Yeah.
break. Obviously, Ronald Koeman came out and stated that he had substituted him to protect him. Now, we've seen the nature of his character and the resolve that he has in returning with a goal and a man of the match display. However, I want to focus on Rashford, because with that strike and his first of the season, obviously it received a collective sigh of relief from the travelling contingent and those watching. You and I spoke in great detail about the forward during pre-season and how, despite the daily torment that he receives, that his progression was going to rely on the support of his manager and his ability to block out the noise and focus on his football. The start of the campaign has been rather underwhelming for him. I think that was really emphasized with a chorus of irregular boos that echoed around the theatre of dreams. When he remained on the pitch and
Mm.
substitutions were made against Liverpool, it appears as though he's tossed aside the burden that is on his shoulders, that he seems to carry with him on a daily, weekly, annual basis. And he's begun to look like the player of old. With what you've seen in the past week or so, and considering everything that we discussed previously, what does that say about Rashford's character at this stage of his career?
It's a strange one, because I think he's a pretty strong character when you look at the journey that he's been on. I mean, just as a kid, making it took him 2 hours to get to training, whether it was the cliff or wherever it was, and the long walks with his mum Mel helping him carry his bag. Would he make it as a player? Um, so there is that strength of personality that has driven him, but also the flip side of that, and maybe this is the social media age we live in, that he still needs that love and that support for him. I mean, he lost a couple of close friends, and that affects him, distracts him. But ultimately, every individual in life is responsible for their own performances at work, and he has to take more ownership of those. And whether that's the tracking back element, the work out of possession. But I think that the key to Marcus Rashford is that happy Rashford delivers absolutely for the team. And I think that, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conundrum that Ten Hag's got at the moment, because there must be a temptation to start Garnacho on the left, which he likes, start Ahmad on the right, where he's shown he's good, and unleash Rashford through the middle, because he can play that. I know Rashford likes playing off the left, but it must be tempting. I mean, Xerxes is a good player, but he's not going to be a 20 goal a season player. Rasmus Højlund obviously is a terrific prospect. He's young. He's had misfortune with injuries, but I mean, there must be a temptation to play Rashford through the middle. Obviously, they did that against Barnsley to good effect, but it is Barnsley. So yeah, I just think that he can score. I mean, you saw that, was it the season before last? And obviously, like coming in off the left, but just maybe given that, just some of those Bruno passes, or if Eriksen plays those passes through the middle, and then just so let him run onto those and finish, because he can absolutely do that. Just because he wears 10, he can play as a 9 as well. His issue is he's not naturally someone who can hold up the ball. So I think it would work if you're really going for a counter-attacking element to play Rashford through the middle. So this is a long-winded way of saying it's just great to see him scoring again, whether it's cutting in off the left or whether it's sort of through the middle. Or, I mean, his heat map for the last game, he was sort of on playing slightly on the right as well. So there's a good player in there, but it's not about his feet, it's not about his heart, it's about his head with Rashford. It's getting into his head and just encouraging him to deliver because there's a fantastic player there.
There is, and you touched upon the season, not last season, but the one before, where he hit 30 goals. No average player can achieve that week in, week out, particularly when he was the saving grace for Manchester United on multiple occasions. The topic that you were bringing up regarding slotting individuals into that front line is something I've been considering greatly, because obviously we're in September. Ahmad was given the club's player of the month for August. Garnacho is chomping at the bit for regular starting time, and obviously his contributions to the team are very, very relevant when he's coming in off the bench. The problem I suppose that people have, and it's something that I look at with this conundrum, is Rashford has been tried through the middle several times, and it doesn't really pay off in the dividends that you require. He himself as well has obviously come out and stated that he prefers playing on the left-hand side, or even on the right, more so than centrally. I did want to ask you, as somebody who has covered him for many, many years internationally and at club level, do you think in the age that we are in, where tactics have gone in such a way where the number nine is almost dying off, the real number nines that are left, I know you've got Erling Haaland, and he could be complete contradiction to my statement, but he's one of a very, very few number nines that remain in that ilk of a Robert Lewandowski or any of these guys that have come through the years. It's now more so inverted forwards, wide players. Could we be looking at that particular facet where you've got Garnacho on the left, Ahmad on the right, Rashford in the centre, but they live in the era of interchange? And it's all about the ease of interchangeability, where a player can start on the left, end up on the right. And ultimately, you could have a mishmash of three attacking players facilitating a nine, a left, or the right at any given one time. Is that something that you think Rashford would relish, the opportunity to be able to live amongst those two attacking talents alongside him?
I'm not comparing the teams or the individuals, but there is a balance and, as you say, an interchanging between Mbappe and Vinicius Junior at Real Madrid. So I think the template is there. Intelligent players can move around. The whole number nine thing I do find extraordinary. I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, Haaland, Liam Delap, I think is he's got potential. Calvert-Lewin arguably can play that role, but you're right. And anyone at Manchester United's academy will probably tell you the same thing, that all the young players who come through, they want to be number 10s. They want to be, as you say, inverted attackers out wide. So the number nines isn't there. I just think that is a role that Rashford can play if you play to his strength, i.e. that quick ball play through and getting him to run on that. And he probably find it slightly easier to press from that position slightly higher up. His defensive duties won't be so much. I also think Manchester United have an issue on the left without an experience. I mean, Dalot is a good left back, filling in at left back, but he's obviously a right back, and he got sort of exposed the other day, certainly in the first half at Southampton. And Rashford isn't always contributing defensively there. So, I think Luke Shaw might be back in training at some point, which will help. But I don't know. I think Rashford can play through the middle. I don't see that as. I know it's been tried a couple of times, but it's also been tried a couple of times when it's worked, including midweek. So I think it's, if there's a case of needs must, then why not try him?
Here, here. In return for the continued support, Rashford has replied with that sensational brace. The first that I would categorise as vintage Rashford, and the second a delightful first-time finish from that Garnacho ball. And he obviously added an assist. Despite what some will say about the nature of opposition in both outings, you can only beat what is put in front of you, Henry. And you know as well as I do, you can cast your mind back to 1998 and a 3-2 replay defeat for Sir Alex Ferguson's men in the FA Cup to tell you all you need to know about the dangers associated with underestimating opposition. But with that, 7 goals, a second consecutive clean sheet, 8 changes made from the weekend victory at St Mary's. I know the result should be a formality, and no logical United supporter is going to be anticipating a Premier League win off the back of that cup outing. But how impressive was it for this side to handle their affairs professionally while also displaying a badly needed, ruthless side in victory?
Yeah, I mean, I take your point about you can only play what's in front of you, but what was in front of them wasn't that great. I mean, Southampton, they're going to struggle to stay up. They're committed to one way of playing, and you just don't think necessarily their players good enough. So Manchester United really should be, I know they've had issues at Southampton before, but they really should be winning a game like that. Ditto in midweek. Again, it's a confidence booster. The test is going to be Palace at the weekend. That would be far more of a. I mean, the way football fans are, and I completely understand it because I'm one myself, is that if it's your team, you get excited when they win the next throw in, the next corner, score the next goal, win the next game, particularly in the world of sort of emotions being recycled so quickly. But I think you can't judge them at the moment, but you can judge individual things. Rashford's confidence returning, De Ligt growing into the game and looking like the player that he was or more like the player he was than when he broke through. I was really impressed with Ugarte, who came on in the first game and then obviously played more against Barnsley. I just think he's exactly what Manchester United need. I mean, McTominay was a terrific player, but played slightly further forward for Scotland. But in terms of that, no one can ever make comparisons with Keane, but just a touch of Keane sort of aggression and leadership and just going about his business, getting the ball, giving it, just disrupting the opposition, almost treating the opposition as the enemy. I liked his aggression. I liked his anticipation. I think you might have broken up the move which led to a Garnacho goal. I just thought there was something about that. I mean, I did look at him and think, mate, you're going to get quite a few bookings. And then, of course, you look at the fact that how come he's at Manchester United? What were the issues at PSG? So, look, there's a terrific player in there. He's someone they need. And I took, of all the encouraging elements, the 4 or 5 encouraging points. I absolutely took that. And you could see that Onana has grown by having a more settled defence and better defenders in front of him. The second game was slightly different because I think it was at Maguire and Evans, but they weren't really tested. But I just think that, yeah, De Ligt, Ugarte and Rashford, all encouraging.
I've been beating that Ugarte drum since the speculation came with him because it allows the likes of Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes to solely sort of rely on their attacking output rather than having to focus on what they have to do in a sort of defensive transition. I just want to revert back to something we were speaking about with Garnacho because it's one that's regularly discussed across the supporter base, with everything from not receiving the number 7 shirt to not being guaranteed a starting berth on a weekly basis. This season, he's now got 4 goals, 3 assists and 6 appearances. And that's followed the 10 goals and the 5 assists throughout the previous campaign. And he has featured largely off the bench to terrorise the opposition defence. I think it goes hand in hand when Ten Hag spoke earlier this season, about his squad and how he has starters and he has finishers. Nobody will deny, I suppose, the God-given talent that Garnacho possesses. But while many argue about his starting credentials, I think the manager deserves a tremendous amount of plaudits for recognising the benefits of his time management. I mean, he's only 20 years of age, and we're now seeing the benefits of time management on a weekly basis. How have you viewed the progression of the winger and the impact that he can have in moving forward this season?
I've done some work with the PFA, the Professional Footballers Association, and particularly the impact of workload on younger players. And having covered England for a long time, Michael Owen was playing from like under 15, under 16 onwards. He was playing heavy tournaments every summer, as well as breaking through at Liverpool, and and the hamstrings eventually gave way, knee as well, and we have to protect the younger players. And I think Ten Hag is in the dugout. When I'm sure you've been to the press box at Old Trafford, you've got the sports analysts, the scientists in there. They're looking as a player straying into the red zone. And they try to balance the workload of players. I mean, the fact that Jude Bellingham has played more minutes by the age of 21 than David Beckham had by the age of 21. Obviously, slightly different accelerated pathways in terms of Bellingham at Birmingham younger, but it's crazy the amount of football and the intensity of the game, and players do need protecting. That's a broader issue, but specifically from a Manchester United's perspective, I think Ten Hag is good. Obviously, he's got slight tactical issues in terms of he's got other players in those positions, and he can bring Garnacho on. But I also think there is an element of let's protect young players. But having said that, he's good enough to start, and I think that's the issue that Ten Hag now has to face. Having sort of eased him back into the season, he's got a player who is so hungry to play, which is fantastic. So you don't want someone who's riddled with apathy and just sort of sitting on the bench twiddling his thumbs and counting his money. Garnacho just wants to play, wants to deliver, and you can see why Manchester United fans love that sort of homegrown, that developed element, that confidence to him. The celebration. I love that picture of him going and sitting on the advertising hoardings, and I think Kobbie Mainoo joined him. I mean, that's what Manchester United should be about. It should be about bringing in top name, well-paid players, but also developing your own. It goes back to the mid-20s. There's been a Manchester United homegrown player in the match day lineup, or match day 18, however number it is. So yeah, absolutely, Garnacho, but he needs to be starting playing because he is such a fabulous talent, and whether that is. It might well be on the right if he keeps Rashford on the left and plays Xerxes in the middle. But I think he does need to be on the pitch. It's unfortunate for Ahmad, who's done nothing wrong, has played well. But Garnacho is a player who absolutely needs to be starting. But I do completely understand the logic of Ten Hag easing him back into the season.
On the topic of time management and what you said you do with the PFA, recognising the issues that Michael Owen encountered, another English talent in Kobbie Mainoo has obviously featured very, very heavily for Manchester United and for England at such a young age, made himself one of the first names on the team sheet. So he got a bit of a reprieve against Barnsley. But how do you view the workload on him, especially with the magnitude and the nature of the task that's put upon him on the football field?
I think your best midfield at the moment, if you're going to call it a three, and you've got Bruno in there, and I know Eriksen's played well the last couple of games, but and Mount is coming back to fitness. But I think Bruno does bring you that sort of sense of urgency. He can be annoying and flapping the arms and all that, but I still think he's if the game is opening up and it's a wild game, you've got Bruno in there. I think if it's a bit more tactically disciplined, he's less effective. But anyway, if you've got Bruno Fernandes in there, and then at some point Ugarte is going to have to be starting. I know he's easing his way back in, and then you have Mainoo in there. Casemiro. Those elite games, and Palace will be a running fest. Palace will be physical. They'll move the ball quickly on the counter, and I think Casemiro, in a way, at Manchester United, his race is run. I did like his wife's, obviously loyalty and posting that picture of all that he's won. But time waits for no man in football, particularly, and Mainoo and Ugarte are the future there.
When we're speaking about that, alongside the likes of Mainoo, Diallo, Rasmus Højlund, the youth have obviously inspired a sense of hope and optimism amongst the Manchester masses. However, within that, eyes have also focused on underperforming senior players like Casemiro, not to just focus on him because he is one of many. I found Emmanuel Petit's comments in recent days about these unnamed senior players letting Ten Hag down to be very, very interesting. I mean, this is a former man acknowledging the work that has been carried out by the younger players while also jumping to the defence in stating that the issues at the club are not all Ten Hag's doing. In a time where every Tom, Dick and Harry moves to lament Erik Ten Hag, I think it's refreshing to see a respected ex-professional with no stock in Manchester United moving to support him for a change. How did you view those comments as a whole when you're looking at the senior players in that squad underperforming on a weekly, monthly basis?
I mean, Petit stepping into a radio or podcast studio or television studio is the equivalent of a pin being taken out of a hand grenade. He's consistently entertaining and explosive. I mean, his comments on Ugarte at PSG would, I think he started off by saying, I don't want to alarm Manchester United fans, but, I would disagree with him on that. Although I did see the Newcastle game and he did sort of fade a bit. But on the senior players, I think he's got a point. Probably have a little bit more of a point earlier in the summer because obviously a few of the players got moved on. He's right in terms of, and it's something that Ronaldo said, which I actually thought was quite ironic. I don't think Ronaldo actually saw the irony of what he was saying when he was kind of having a go at Ten Hag, but also having it saying, actually, the structure at Manchester United is all wrong as well. Who is to blame for the problems, Ten Hag or the structure, particularly in recruitment? So I thought Petit. I think probably what he was saying in terms of players not delivering a culture of underperformance over, well, probably in the Glazer era, or certainly in the post Ferguson era, I think many Manchester United fans would nod their head in agreement.
Ultimately, Henry, all of it is going to count for nothing, everything we've discussed, if results do not remain positive. And we have alluded to it on a couple of occasions now, but Saturday evening is going to present a return to Selhurst Park, 5:30 Premier League fixture. And it's the venue for what is one of the lowest points of an incredibly frustrating season last year with that May 4-0 capitulation. Given everything that we have discussed, a win and a continued momentum is a must. With Palace looking a shadow of themselves at the moment, even from several months ago, they're without a win in 4 league outings. How do you view the fixture playing out on Saturday?
It'd be interesting to see how Palace approach it, whether they go and press high in sort of Glasner style, which would cause Manchester United some problems. I can't believe they'd sit back at home, Palace. So I think Manchester United will have to go out and play. I'm still not completely sure what Manchester United's identity is. Is it old Manchester United? Is it a bit of Ajax in there? Is it possession? Is it counter-attacking? Maybe Ten Hag's being super clever and he's actually sort of, unleashing all these different styles. Um, but I think that you can't play Casemiro in a game like that with the sort of the physicality and particularly the pace that Palace have got. They will absolutely have a threat with Eze, and um, but yeah, but you're right. I mean, Manchester United, the last two wins were good, but they're wins that you would expect. This now is more of a challenge because Glasner is a very canny coach. Um, and absolutely, I mean, is Ugarte ready to start? I still think I think he probably has to. Really, I think you need him in there with Mainu, and then you just unleash that pace as Palace will try to do, unleash their flyers. So yeah, I mean, I can see Manchester United winning. There'll be huge support. I mean, fair play to the fans for getting down there because it is. I would say it's the most difficult stadium in the country to get to. I mean, you can be in the middle of London and still be 4 and a bit hours away from Selhurst Park. So look, the fans will go there. They'll support the team. And there's a Spurs at home next.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, those are two winnable games. I mean, Spurs are a bit sort of hit and miss at the moment. Depending on who's fit up front. But Manchester United, you're right, absolutely have to maintain this momentum, and there should be an element of pride as well after what happened last season. You want to make up for that.
That was one thing I was going to say. You really want that squad to stand up and be counted and make amends for what that travesty was. You made an interesting point about still being uncertain about what we're looking at with Manchester United because it was one of the biggest things I saw against Southampton in the opening 30 minutes. When you look at the game, second game of the season, when we travelled to Brighton, United were very much on the front foot. It was a high press, putting Brighton under pressure in defence. And then we go to Southampton, a side that are obviously having their own struggles and a return to the top tier. And the side was happy to sit off and let Southampton have the ball and push forward with it. It was something I was very, very surprised with because I did expect more of that forward pressing attitude that we've been seeing. And maybe sitting back culminated with a very poor opening 30 minutes and allowing pressure to come on, which will inevitably cause individual errors. Would you expect him to go on the front foot against Palace, or is there going to be a reservation considering what occurred in May?
I would hope he would go on the front foot. I think your point about momentum is completely right. We'll just ride with that momentum. The fans will expect it. That the players instinctively, after a 7-0 win, they will absolutely be expecting it. After a 3-0 away win, they will be expecting it. So I hope Ten Hag's not cautious. I mean, he has to go on the front foot. He has to say, look, press them, attack, let's nick a goal. Because Manchester United have got the talent. You've got one or two good kids as well floating. You've got players coming back from injury. So just do it. You have to do it. If Manchester United can get anywhere near the Champions League positions, these are the games that they're going to have to take maximum points from.
One last topic that I want to just touch on with you because we spoke about it several months ago was regarding Luke Shaw. And at the time, as I said, we were speaking when Gareth Southgate was in his final preparations, and Shaw had obviously missed ample time for United and then was included in the England squad. Didn't feature until late on, and obviously has missed pre-season and is yet to feature. I think supporters are sitting on the edge of their seat every single week waiting for news to establish what exactly is going on with him. It appears as though he is potentially knocking on the door of returning, but we're not yet assured of this. How do you view that entire scenario with a guy who has obviously been so badly hit with injuries throughout his career, but he's someone that not only Marcus Rashford is missing, but the entire team is missing, especially when there is no recognised left back. Dallo is deputising there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think the national team, England, are missing him as well. I mean, a fit, in form um, Luke Shaw is an elite international talent at a time when England don't really have many other left backs as well, sort of Ben Chilwell. But from a Manchester United perspective, you're absolutely crying out for him, for a fit Luke Shaw. I mean, the injuries are just so frustrating. I mean, whether it dates back to that horrendous leg break, was it against PSV in Europe? I mean, that was just awful. But I remember he showed we spoke to him at St George's Park about a year or so afterwards when he finally got recalled to the England team. And he actually rolled up his tracksuit and he just showed us the leg and the sort of, the sort of like the mark where the operation went on. And I mean, I think he said he could have lost his leg. I mean, it was awful what happened to him. Mentally that would affect someone as well as physically. So I don't know whether Manchester United can necessarily rely on him long term. I hope they can, but he's 29, 28, 29, I'm not sure. He broke through early, but at some point you need to have a settled left back. You can't. I mean, Dalot, was he your player of the season last season? But that was in a different position, having to sort of fill in at left back. You saw the first 30 minutes against Southampton; he was sort of struggling there. So look, Luke Shaw's one of the nicest guys you can meet. I didn't think he was particularly well treated by Mourinho. I think he needs a good run, but he just needs this run away from injuries, because there's a terrific player in there. He gives you crossing, he gives you set pieces, he gives you balance, gives you that energy. So yeah, I hope to see him back for Manchester United's benefit as well as for England, because he's a terrific player. But ultimately, I don't know how much long term you can rely on him.
And I suppose the person that would be looking forward to seeing him back more than anyone is Marcus Rashford. Henry, an absolute pleasure chatting as always. I must say, I've enjoyed your daily Substack, a breath of fresh air to read with a cuppa. What else have you got coming up over the coming days, weeks, and months?
I've just finished a book with a player, with Duncan Ferguson, which is out next year, which I have to say was quite an experience, taking me to parts of British life I didn't really know existed, but amazing, because he had some good games against you guys. So that's really good. And I just started another book. I've got a radio show, just TV and radio, and just enjoying enjoying being able to write what I want, enjoying being able to. A lot of it is out from a paywall as well, which is good. And social media is huge. You don't make any money on social media, but it's good that you can just sort of let rip. So I was invited to Sven's funeral by the family last Friday, and able to, it's always difficult when you're sort of slightly balancing that when you're there as a sort of a guest as much as a journalist. But I wrote something on that, and I thought, well, I'm just going to put it out on social media. I'm not going to put it behind a paywall of Substack. I mean, I do a lot of stuff behind Substack, but that was nice, just being able to do that. And then you see what 2/3 of a million people read it. You wouldn't get that in a broadsheet. So that is nice. But yeah, Substack, and just keeping the wolf from the door.
And I'd imagine anybody listening is already aware of where they can find you, but you spoke about social media. If there is one or two lunatics listening today that don't interact with you, how can they do so?
But just at Henry Winter on Twitter, I'm quite easily available. I mean, we're incredibly fortunate because we love football, and because it's just become. I started writing about football in 85, 86, when it wasn't particularly fashionable to talk about it, let alone write about it. With hooliganism and all the issues. Whereas now, wherever you go, people want to talk football, and also about Manchester United. I mean, Manchester United is just, you will get, I mean, any sports editor of a newspaper will tell you they'll get twice as much reaction from a Manchester United piece than from any other club. Possibly Liverpool might come close, Real Madrid might come close, but Manchester United are just, even Manchester United in dark times, just generates so much interest. And that's because people love your great club. And I hear people say Manchester United are not relevant anymore. It's absolute nonsense. There are journalists who basically just rely on Manchester United's rise and fall, through the day, let alone through the week. They're absolutely huge. And the individuals there, and also what people forget a lot about, and I've done work on this, and it's a privilege to have covered it. But John Shields and the foundation, the community operation, the work they do in schools, the work they do with hungry kids, and obviously some of it's around the world and is a high profile, but actually so much of it, and everyone thinks of United as just this global brand, but so much of the work they do in local schools is a huge credit to the club and a reminder that Manchester United are still at the heartbeat of their community.
Hated, adored, never ignored, Henry. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, I would do a lot of work with the Manchester United Foundation as well, and they don't get anywhere near the recognition and the acknowledgement for the amazing work that they do in the community. If anybody here wants to get in touch with me, you can do so at Shaun Connolly 85, and make sure to follow theatre_of_red across every social platform. And as always, if you're still listening, please leave a review. And if you want to, you can subscribe to stay alert for our weekly content. Your support really does mean the world to me. Enjoy the football at the weekend, and let's hope we're chatting about a win when we speak again. All the best, folks.